The product that we're going to show you is called CrashPlan from a company called Code 42. This tends to be our de facto product for client backup. The reason we choose it is that we can very quickly be up and running with it. So we can implement this, we can implement it with cloud storage, we can implement it with on-premise storage, and we can very quickly be backing up our clients. And as well as that, we can ensure that as IT, we have control of that. So we can define what's being backed up on the clients, when it's being backed up on the clients, the reporting for those clients, as well as ensuring that we're meeting any security requirements along the way. So we're going to head into a demo. And for people that have used Macs before, this will look very familiar. The scenario is exactly the same for Windows users as well. So we join our user here just as they've got a brand new machine that's out of the box. We're leveraging a couple of other technologies around that. We're using an MDM and Apple's device enrollment program so that we can automatically set up the machine. But other than that, it's pretty much an out-of-the-box experience. So the user's been given their new machine, or IT could be doing this on their behalf. We've got it out of the box. We've created a user account on that particular machine, and it's taken us through the standard Apple setup. What we should see is that as soon as that device is enrolled into our management system, we're pushing the Code 42 agent to it. So our backup agent is automatically being installed in the background. If you're not using a management solution to manage your devices, this would simply just be a PKG that you would double click on, and it would install the agent onto that client for you. Okay, so we can just see that that's launching now for us, and this is the CrashPlan agent that lives on all of the clients. The agent itself is updated centrally from the server, so we don't have to worry about ongoing updates and whatnot. Packages are unique to our environment, so we can see that it's pre-filled it with the server address, and it's taken the username from my login username. So all I need to do is supply my password. Typically, this would be integrated with Active Directory, so the end user's only got a single password. We also support single sign-on as well. So the user, once I've signed into that, is going to realize that this device has never been backed up before, because it's a brand new device out of the box. So it presents us with the option to either add it as a new device if I'm a new member of staff and I just want to back up my new device, or it allows me to replace an existing device that I used to own. So if this is a device that I've left on the bus, or this is a device that the hard drive's failed, or simply I've been given a new machine by IT, this is the device that I want to replace. So I can go ahead and click that button. The application itself gives me a three-step process to adopt that device, which enables me to then download all the information, etc. My previous laptop is listed in there, so I can select it and head into the next screen. I'm presented with all the data that was backed up. Now mine's a very lightweight demo, so I've only got a few documents on there. Typically, that would show you your whole user environment. And we'd normally just put a checkbox under /users or something like that, because we want to restore the whole laptop to exactly how it works. We can choose Get Files, and what that will allow us to do is say where we want these files to be put, do we want them to be overwritten, and what permissions do we want to use. This is a brand new laptop, so I'm putting them into their original location. So I can go ahead and execute that now. You see my documents have been put back in place on the right-hand side, and as an end user, I'm starting to get back to work now. Okay. At this point, what we're going to do is we're going to take over the backup of the previous machine. So rather than have to upload all this data back to the cloud again, which you do with most applications, this was simply pick up where the old machine left off. So it asks us to sign back in again, and this time my device has taken the identity of the previous backed up device. So it doesn't have to re-upload all the data again, it purely just carries on from where it left off. Okay. What you see in there is that the initial backup has not started, but within a few seconds the backup kicks in, and we'll see that that goes to a completed state because it's got very little to back up. Now, while that's in the process of doing the first backup, what I'd like to show you is how, as an end user, I can restore files. So typically in most environments, this is a case of logging an IT desk ticket. They have to trawl through the tapes or the file servers and pull those backups for us. With the Code 42 solution, we can simply open up CrashPlan as an end user. I can choose the Get Files button, which will present me with a list of all the files that I have backed up in my backup. I can choose a particular day, and I can choose the files that you want to restore. So in my example, I've deleted one off the desktop, I've highlighted the file that I've accidentally deleted, and I've chosen Get Files. Again, I can download it into the original location, or I can put it into my Downloads folder if I wanted to compare it between the original file and the one that's been deleted. Common scenario is that somebody saves a file over the top of another file and they lose the previous document. So then they would download a different version into Downloads. They can compare the two without losing either. The final and very quick solution I'd like to show you with this is that we don't always have our laptop with us. So we might be out at a meeting, we might be heading somewhere and we've forgotten our laptop, and we need some particular documents that are on our desktop or they're in our documents folder, and we very quickly need to restore those. So if we don't have our physical device with us, but we have an internet connection, we can connect through a web page to our backup using our Active Directory credentials. As you can see in here, I've headed into my device, exactly the same as it looks through the GUI, and I can do a restore. The main difference is that this is going to zip up any files that I choose to restore, and it's going to present me with a link to download them to the local computer. So, for example, if I was to go and do a presentation for a customer, I forgot my laptop, I could very quickly pull those files down onto a replacement laptop and use it. Likewise, if I was traveling abroad and bought a laptop, as long as I've got access to that web page, I can retrieve my data. The same portal can be used by administrators to download backups on behalf of users as well. So if a user does put an IT support request in, you can use the same portal with an administrative credentials and see all of the devices in your environment. And you can see there that I've completed and downloaded that particular backup. So that completes the workflow for an end user and client backup, and hopefully what that does is gives you a flavor of the art of the possible and how we can very quickly provision new devices to end users, and how we can couple that with backup solutions such as Code 42 to very quickly restore that end user data. And for us, that's the key thing. If somebody loses a laptop, we don't want to have to be trawling through hard drives or manually copying this data back in place from file servers. We want to ensure that a user can very quickly get a new device, they can get the application in place, either by installing it as a PKG or using a management solution as per our demo, and that they can very quickly get back to work as quickly as possible. And we see this software used throughout our environment. So in some environments, we simply protect management and VIP with this software. In other environments, we protect all laptops that are in the estate. And regardless of policy, we have policies in place that say all corporate data should be stored on file servers, or it should be stored in SharePoint or Salesforce. And our users are, while to a certain extent they will follow those rules, they're always going to store stuff on their desktop. They're always going to store stuff in their documents, and this is what this solution protects us against: the ability to recover data regardless of where the user stored it. Okay. A couple of very quick screenshots from the solution itself. We've got one in the bottom right-hand corner there that shows you just a snippet of the web interface, and the idea of this is just to give you an overview of how simple this is to set up. So the screenshot there shows where we choose what the user is backing up. So, in my example there, it's saying that the backup will always run. It will be verified every day at 3 in the morning, and if the computer's not on at 3, it will just delay that until the computer is available. And the file selection. So in my example, I'm only backing up the desktop. In a production environment, this would typically be the entire users folder. There's lots of other settings in there. For example, encryption for this particular backup. Who holds the encryption keys? Is the data secure at rest? And does the backup happen when the CPU is above 50% usage, for example, or when the laptop's on battery? So the granular control with this is pretty limitless. For every scenario, you can bend it into the shape that you wish. Taking a very different direction. So we've looked at the client backup of those particular machines, And what we're going to do now is we're going to take a different track, which is looking at the virtual machine backup. While most of our customers have a good backup policy in place, we find that the majority of them have got an on-premise backup. And what they're looking for is they're looking for a solution where they can very quickly, easily, and cost-effectively off-site those backups. And Jigsaw offers a few solutions around that, whether it's file-level backup or virtual machine backup. In this scenario, we're going to cover the virtual machine backup. And we've got customers that are using this for very small virtual machines that are just around the 10 gig, all the way up to virtual machines that are around the 50, 60 terabyte mark. So people are using this with large file servers, and they're just using it for infrastructure, domain controllers, etc. The solution that we're going to show you today is based around Veeam. Jigsaw uses Veeam because it's widely recognized as an industry leader in the backup of virtual machines, and from our experience, it's the product that allows us to get up and running the quickest. And we get excellent support from Veeam on any queries that do come up, so it has been a favorite product of ours for a long time. What makes our offering different is that Jigsaw is a Cloud Connect provider, so we can provide you with a URL, a username and password that you can put into Veeam, and it grants you access to a cloud repository of storage. And that can be used for backup purposes, and it can also be used for replication purposes. Okay. What I'd like to do is take you through a video that Phil and I put together this morning that essentially shows you how quickly and easily you can get up and running with this solution. This is a brand new Veeam install, so the first thing we need to do is add the service provider. We change the port because Jigsaw solution runs on 443 to ensure that it can get through most people's firewalls, and we provide a DNS address. The only other thing we need to provide is a username and password. So this will be provided by Jigsaw, upon the service. In mine, it's just THDemo. Once we've added these credentials, we can hit next, and it will show us the entitlements that we have available. So generally, when you have a service like this, you'll buy a certain amount of capacity, whether that's storage in the terms of backup, or whether that's CPU and memory in terms of replication. These are dynamic, so they can be increased or decreased at any particular time. Because this is a new Veeam implementation, I don't have any backup sources, so I'm just going to add a local Hyper-V server, which hosts a virtual machine that's a standard copy of Windows Server. Again, with the Veeam solution, and this is the reason that we go for it, it's very easy and very quick to get up and running with this. So I simply added the IP address of the Hyper-V server, and I'm providing credentials that allows me to connect to that particular server. In the background, it installs the necessary components onto that Hyper-V server for us. So if this was a cluster, it would go off and install them on multiple servers, or if it was a VMware environment, it would go and install it on all of the AXI servers, etc. So we're now in a situation where we've got our cloud storage defined, and we've also got our local Hyper-V server. So I can go ahead and create a backup job. And this one is just called example VM, and it's just a backup of my local VM. Normally backup jobs would hold multiple VMs, so if it's a file server, it might run at 3 o'clock in the morning. If it's infrastructure, it might just run at 6 o'clock at night, and we can say how often it does incrementals, fulls, etc. It's fully customizable as you would expect. I've got repo, so we've just choose the cloud one that we added previously. Generally, our customers will have a cheap NAS on site, like a QNAP or something like that. So they would run 2 jobs, one to the on-premise storage for fast restores, and then one to the cloud to ensure that it's off-site. I'm just going to start that job running, even though it's scheduled for 11 o'clock tonight, just so that we can get a backup in place. I've sped this up a little bit, but hopefully you can see in the bottom right-hand corner the timer going up, and I think it takes about 10 minutes on my internet connection at home to back up a 10 gig virtual machine. And if you look at the transfer window, you can see that the compression ratio that we're getting on this. So the actual amount of data transferred is nowhere near the amount of data that's stored on the local disk. So it's very efficient, it's very lean, which is what enables us to back up 50 terabyte virtual machines with this solution. So our backup's complete, and you can see my virtual machine is running here. So I'm going to shut that down, and I'm going to pretend like I've accidentally deleted it so that we can do a full restore, and I can show you how quickly we can do that. We don't have to restore the whole VM. We can dive inside of it and grab files. We can restore just virtual hard disks, or we can do instant VM recoveries, etc. Because I've deleted it, we're going to restore the entire VM in this instance. As part of the restore wizard, we can go in and we can choose the VM that we want to restore. It's from backup, and if we expand this out, it'll show us all the versions we've got. So if we're keeping 14 copies, for example, we can choose one from when it was the last known good configuration. Or if we want to do a test restore, we can choose one from a week ago, and we can restore it into an isolated environment so that we can fire it up, make sure it's all good, etc. So before we hit next, we can see the VM that I've chosen, its size, and the recovery point. Next option, do I want to restore it, as I said previously, to its original location, or do I want to restore it to a new location if I'm running a test, or if I want to run some upgrades on it as a test before I do it on my production storage. It will always ask me for a reason why I'm restoring this, purely if there's multiple administrators so they can go in and see why I did this. That it's going to overwrite any local objects that may exist. So, if that production server still exists and I did this full restore into its original location, it would overwrite the VM that is running at this moment in time. So it's just given us a gentle warning just to say, are you sure you really want to do this? At this point, our restore is going to begin. This is going to take us, as long as your as long as it takes to download that amount of data over your internet connection. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of people are using this service with Jigsaw, is that if you've got, for example, 50 terabytes worth of virtual machines backed up with this solution, and you lose your primary site, it would take far too long to download that back over the internet, especially if you've lost your local copies. Now, because Jigsaw's, it's our own equipment that this is being backed onto, we have the option that if you've had a complete loss, that we can restore these virtual machines onto new hardware actually within the data center, and then we can ship that hardware directly to you so that you're back up and running as quickly as possible. You don't have to wait for X amount of terabytes to download over the temporary ADSL line that you've got in your temporary offices, or wherever you may be when you find yourself in that scenario. And likewise, the other way around, if you need to seed a large amount of data, so if you've got 2 terabytes worth of virtual machines that you need to back up, we can seed those onto hard drives, ship them into the data center, so that we're only doing the incremental backups over the network. Now again, that was sped up, but you can see that our restore is completed in good time there. So just to show you that that did work, we're going to have a quick look at the logs. So by default, we can see the logs for the last 24 hours. So we can see that my backup and my restore have been successful. If I head into Hyper-V, it's not there at the moment, but if I refresh, I can see that my virtual machine has once again reappeared. I can stop it, and then I can connect to it just to show that that virtual machine has been restored into perfect health. And it fires up without issue, and life carries on. Okay, so that brings us to the end of a quick overview of how we can leverage Veeam with J24 Backup. And J24 Backup, as I said earlier, Veeam Cloud Connect is just one of the ways that we expose that. We expose it in many different ways to work with many different backup solutions and to fit most people's requirements. But for the purpose of virtual machine backup, we find Veeam to be an excellent product. And like I say, we're using it in anger on some really heavyweight virtual machines, and it works really well for us, and we really enjoy it. So I'm going to stop talking at this moment in time, and I'm going to hand over to Phil. Phil's going to run through some media management techniques and software. And then at the end of that, if there's any queries or anything like that, if you guys send them us in a direct message to either myself, Thomas, or Phil, we can pick those up. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Tom. So, yeah, what I'll be going through here is, media management software and processes you can use to manage assets moving through your business, through your storage, and how that can then facilitate planning of backup and archiving strategies to secure yourself. So if we just take a look, what I'll be going through initially is the benefits of that to your business, then ways you can get started with media management if it's not been a consideration of yours in the past, and then I'll do a quick demo of one particular piece of software that we tend to recommend, along with the restore process for that as well. So you can just see in short how that would work for your media assets. The benefits to asset management, of course, giving you better control of the assets or the data that's coming through your business so that you can more efficiently use the storage that you've invested in. This especially speaks to anybody who's using high-res media where the cost per terabyte of the storage may be a lot higher for their production storage because of the speeds required. So a good strategy around archiving projects helps to keep those costs down. And on top of that as well, with many of the backup and archiving pieces of software and asset management as well, you build up a database of your assets, which can be utilized to reuse your media assets, which could then again help you to keep costs down. So what we'll be looking at in particular, in terms of getting started, the demo I'm going to do in a moment touches on Yoyotta, which is shown here. But there are a number of products in this area at different scales. So whenever you're looking to get started with asset management, it's always useful to go through these kinds of steps initially. Defining workflows, not just in the sense of project workflows and the kinds of formats you're using, but also in terms of how the projects are going to move through your business and through your storage, and as it mentions there, considerations for at what point you may want to archive something, and getting started through introduction of the software itself and how that can benefit you. There are a lot of businesses out there that may do a lot of data moving manually currently, and introducing asset management software is always a good step towards automation as well, and that helps you to introduce other things such as verification of data. So rather than a manual copy to different storage pools, you can automate that, verify that the data arrived there correctly, and cut out the possibility of mistakes as well. So there's just a few things to consider, but what I'll do initially next is just a demo of how Yoyotta handles data moving, which could be applied then to backup, and show you through how it indexes these files, creating a more sort of usable database of what's going through your business. So just quickly go through, and as I say, this is just one example of the kinds of software you can get, but Yoyotta in particular I think is quite accessible if you're just starting out in this kind of area. So here we have an example job which can be set up for something like backup, and simply from left to right will give you your backup sources and destinations. Now this you can see here is the database that you can start to build from Yoyotta as it scans through your sources, and the kind of information that it can pull out of the clips or any kind of media or other assets that you have in the database there. So as you can see in this example, even for video data, you can pull out stills and have that reported on, so that even if your media is archived, being able to review that and bring it back is made easier than any kind of manual process, particularly if you're looking at moving towards tape, and that media is less accessible. So here you can see just a way of adding a new source to the software, which will pull the data, such as you're seeing here, about how many files there are, what kind of structure is on the disk. So you're already seeing that in real time, the kind of capacities you're dealing with, and then adding destinations for that to be backed up to. And this bit, like the previous demos, I've just shortened this down a bit, but then you have real-time feedback of the copy that's going on, how long it's going to take, and that will also then, once the copy is complete, verify that data against the checksum that's created to make sure that it also arrived there correctly and there's no inconsistencies in the data, which is also something that can be applied to any kind of tape backups. So when you start to consider archiving and the integrity of those archives, you can use software like this that can create verification checksums to continuously maintain your backups and archives as well. And as you can see here, those clips that were imported, again, it pulled the metadata from them. And all of that is searchable as well. So going back to the idea of being able to reuse your assets, it makes it more accessible and reusable if you want to look for particular types of clips. And that was just being shown on screen just there was also an example of the reporting you can get out of these systems. So if you have batches of tapes in an archive, you can accompany that with those kinds of reports and make the media more accessible to any level in the business as well. So just in the flip side of that as well, just to demonstrate the process for restoration, because if you have this large library of archive, or if you have files that you want to retrieve from a backup that maybe have been deleted from the primary storage, again, the process is fairly simple with things like Yoyotta, but also can scale up to much larger products as well. Okay, so here we see the same interface for the restores as well, but going into your, it could be potentially much larger than this database of your assets. You can drill down into that, search for certain clips, and either do partial restores or even full restores of whole tapes, depending on the requirement. And things like this make it fairly easy to add this back in as sources. And Yoyotta is not the only product that does this, but others will be able to do partial restores, which save on your capacity of your online storage as well. Because you're not constantly having to bring back whole tapes just to find those particular clips that you want. So in those two examples there, you can see the differences between restoring the whole folder or just a number of clips in terms of capacity and what that could be potentially saving you there. And also just the demonstration here touches on the fact that all of these features you can use with tape as well as disk. So particular products like Yoyotta as an example can work with single drives or with whole libraries utilizing up to 4 tape drives there. So hopefully that was helpful in terms of just a brief overview of how you can leverage this software to better control the assets that are running through your business and enable archiving to keep your online storage free of maybe old data.